Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chase, and today we're going over all of the basics of one of the most versatile Lalo attacks in the game, the Blizzard Lalo. Let's get right into it. The Blizzard is a combination of super wizards dropped out of a blimp and kept invisible while raged up to deal massive damage to a base. The Blizz Lalo is incredibly effective because the Blizz can get rid of threats in a base that loons can't target, like the CC and enemy heroes, and it can carve out portions of a base that would be hard for a normal Sui to reach, like the core or an area covered by the CC. Just like in a Sui Lalo, the goal of the Blizz and the Sui should be to set up the Lalo path to be in the shape of a capital L or a straight line, so that the loon pathing is very predictable. This is a standard Blizz Lalo army I like to use in Legends, and I'll make minor changes to this for League matches. The Blizz consists of 5 goblins and 4 super wizards, or as I like to call them, Swizz. You can use archers or barbarians as the filler troops too. Just needs to be 5 ground troops in addition to the 4 super wizards. That way they trigger the bombs before the Swizz exit the blimp. A common change to this army would be using 5 invis spells and subtracting a freeze. This is good for ring bases, using the extra invis for your heroes to get the town hall on the Sui. You can also choose a safe Blizz if you want to target the town hall and suspect it's baited with a tornado and a bunch of giant bombs. The safe Blizz consists of 3 super wizards and 15 goblins. You want goblins on this one because they will all run forward and trigger all of the giant bombs while outlasting the NATO to keep your super wizards safe. When planning, first identify the main weaknesses to Lalo in the base, which are the CC and heroes because loons can't target them, the town hall because you need your warden ability to go through it, and the core of the base since that's usually where people stack red air mines to counter Lalo. Then see if you can get at least 2 of these with the Blizz. Also will be beneficial to target scatters or multi-infernos too. After you determine good Blizz locations, you have to figure out if you can safely get a blimp to that spot. Look out for air defenses around that location, so you can use a hound to fly across and soak up all the traps and damage. As an advanced tip, hounds can trigger seeking air mines up to 1 tile behind an air defense, but if seeking air mines are 2 tiles behind, a blimp will get hit by them. So to counter this, you can send the blimp at a slight angle, and then the seeking air mines will have to travel more to hit their target. Also, any sweepers pointing towards the area will need to be frozen as well. After figuring out the blimp location and seeing what the Blizz will get, look for where you can follow up with a Sui hero dive. I usually pick a side next to the Blizz area, so that you don't need to use more troops to make a path for your heroes. With the Sui, you want to aim for another one of the Lalo weaknesses mentioned earlier, but you should prioritize setting up a straight path for the Lalo. If you struggle to find a good place to Sui, I highly recommend checking out my Sui Lalo guide for a more in-depth look at getting great Sui value. If the heroes can get to the core, then you can Lalo in an L shape, but if they can't get to the core, then try to get the straight line because it's much easier for your Lalo. You also want at least 1 air defense left up so that the hounds will have something to anchor to. Otherwise, they'll all be stuck on the outside of the base, where they can't protect the loons from splash damage. And now we'll get into how to execute a Blizz Lalo. We can break it into 3 parts, the Blizz, the Sui, and the Lalo. We'll start in order with the Blizz. Use a Lava Hound to get your Blizz deeper into a base, or just a few balloons if it doesn't have to travel that far. Drop the Blizz on top of potential giant bomb locations in the area that you want a Blizz. That way the filler troops trigger the bombs before the Swizz exit the blimp. The town hall is tricky as the poison extends over the edges of the building when it goes down. So to keep the Swizz alive, you have to drop the blimp about 2 tiles away so that the Swizz can reach, but they won't step into the poison. Also place the invis spell before the blimp opens so that the filler troops stay alive just long enough to trigger the traps around the town hall. Place the invisibility, then drop the blimp, and then follow up with a rage. That way the Swizz will have more time in the rage. Invis spells last 4.5 seconds, so you should count about 4 seconds before placing another to account for the spell's time to drop. You don't have to use all the invis spells on the Blizz. If you get the value you wanted, save any remaining invis for the Sui portion. And if you lured the CC but didn't kill it with the Blizz, find a spot on the map out of range of defenses and bring the CC troops over there to deal with them. Killing the CC like this is a lot easier than when it's in range of defenses like this. I'll drag tanky troops to the outside of the base, but usually for damage CCs, I'll just have my ice golem soak up all the damage, and the poison should deal with them. For the Sui, you want to mold the base into a favorable Lalo path like we talked about before. I'll stick to the basics, but you should check out my Sui Lalo guide for more advanced Sui tips. The heroes do well when you play to their strengths. The king out in front, tanking for the queen, who will do the damage and shoot over walls for more buildings, while the RC, you can either delay to head to the core, or use it to push your heroes into the core. If you have no clear spot for the RC, you can center in near the Lalo to help keep the Lalo path narrow. You can also start the Lalo before the Sui dies to push them in a certain direction. Just make sure the hero spawned units are dead. If not, the Warden will follow the bigger group and abandon the loons. The Lalo here is slightly different from a Sui Lalo, but many of the same concepts apply. Hound goes into tank as many defenses as possible, while you send in balloons behind to individually target the defensive buildings. Hold back about 10 to 12 balloons to use in small groups on the outside, taking out stray defenses which will keep your main pack of balloons moving in a straight path. As a general rule, you haste when the balloons are completely protected, and freeze when they're vulnerable. Normally I start with haste as the hounds are blocking all the damage, then I freeze as the hounds move across the base, and then haste again once the freezes are down. But it all depends on the base. If the remaining air defenses are too far apart, I like to use a little trick where I Warden Tome over a hound so it's invincible as it crosses the base, and it soaks up all the mines and blocks a ton of defenses. Then you can trickle in a few balloons on the side where the hound ends up, since it'll be tanking for longer. This works really well when air defenses are far apart, and if you used a hound to tank for the Blizz and only have 2 left. For the rest of the Lalo, it's almost the same as the Sui Lalo, except the Warden Tome becomes much more important because you have a lot less spells to work with. You'll need your tome to cover at least one of the 4 Lalo weaknesses that we mentioned before. Typically I'll use the tome as the loons approach the core, and to protect headhunters for the enemy heroes. Loons can't target heroes, so the enemy RC and Queen will absolutely decimate your Lalo unless you bring headhunters to deal with them. But headhunters are ground units, so ground expos and cannons will take them down, which means you need the tome to save them. Stagger your headhunters as well, just in case there's spring traps along the way. You don't want to lose all of your headhunters to a single spring trap. In my opinion, the best way to practice is to use Blizz Lalo in Legends and do some low pressure friendly challenges first. It's tough to learn it all at once, so practice each step one at a time, with the Blizz first, then the Sui, followed by the Lalo. If you fail, watch your replays and try to figure out what went wrong and how you can improve for next time. And that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new today. If you did, hit that like and comment what you learned. It really helps a ton. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one. Now go crush some bases.